What up, watch peeps? I've always been a big fan of the Heuer Autavia or the Breitling Copilot. This is the look that was also captured in the Dan Henry 1963. I just love the overall look of these watches. So when I was approached to review a watch that was designed in this vein, I was about it. And it was from a fashion brand that I was admittedly not very familiar with, but when the watch arrived, I was very pleasantly surprised with just how good it is. So let's check it out. I'm Pete, and we are chilling with watches. First check. I am wearing that Quartz San Martin. I've had this thing on a Nato, but I thought I would throw it on this mesh for a different look. And it's kind of casual and fun, and I am digging it. But let's take a look at this Fawler Ryka watch we got going on here. Very traditional kind of watch box. You got your outer box. Really nice presentation though, as you have your kind of dust cover there, and you have this kind of padded leather box with, this is like a cursive F for Fawler, I believe. And inside you will find, well, besides one kick-ass watch, you'll find your little Fawler book with some tough dude on the cover. And inside you have, they give you a nice polishing cloth, also branded. But really, what we want to look at here is this watch, because it is pretty freaking awesome. So this is a really rugged watch, kind of built for adventure. It's from a brand out of Denmark called Trendhjem. They have like a Trendhjem accessories. It's like a website, fashion kind of website, but they have a watch brand as well, which is Fawler, and this particular model is the Ryka. Now, it comes in multiple colors. There's a gray version, kind of a gray dial, gray bezel. And then you have like a black with kind of standard white lume instead of the old radium lume look I have here. Then there's also like a PVD blacked out model, and of course this kind of old radium or vintage lume looking model that I have here. This one I chose because I think it just really captures the essence of those kind of historical references that I mentioned earlier that I just absolutely love the look of. But if you're not a fan of this kind of old radium lume look, it definitely is available in models without. So what we have is a 41 millimeter chronograph if measured at the case, excluding these crown guards, but it's 43 at the bezel. So how's it wear? Somewhere in between, probably around 42 millimeters. But this bezel is got these really thick, grippy teeth, super easy to use, and I think that's kind of what adds that extra 2 millimeters to the overall case size here. Price-wise, now there's a launch discount of $269 on right now. When that expires, it goes up to a full price of $299, I believe. The PVD version being a little more. So let's take a closer look at this dial. We'll start the chronograph hand ticking there as well. I gotta say, I love the font choices here for their branding at 12 o'clock and the little bit of text you find down there at 6 o'clock as well. Nothing fancy, just a very classy font choice. So this is a 2-register chronograph. At 3 o'clock you have a running seconds hand, no weird 24-hour subdial, and over at 9 o'clock you have the chronograph minutes. Now the chronograph central seconds is what you see running there as well. But one of my absolutely favorite details about this dial is that date window. First, it's at 6 o'clock, great choice. It's this really awesome framed portal though. It's just super cool, isn't it? You can kind of see how it's inset, and then it has that polished ring around it. And it's a color matched date wheel both on the text and the background. Killer job, one of the best date windows I've ever seen. You have a really kind of standard minute track. No tachymeter bezel or tachymeter scale on this one. Just kind of a really plain, nice minute track. I love the silver rings around the outsides of the subdials. You got kind of your concentric circles on the interior parts there as well. And as far as markers go, just one number at the top for 12 o'clock and just kind of printed old radium lume stick markers for the rest of the hour markers. Hands choice, oh, again, these are some of the best hands I've ever seen. Super cool sword hands. Maybe saying best hands I've ever seen is a bit of an exaggeration, but I just really like the style and shape of these. They're super easy and legible. They don't get lost in the registers, which is a problem with chronographs very often, I think. For the crystal, we have a double domed sapphire crystal, as you can see here from the legibility at this extreme angle. But what I really like is how well integrated the crystal is with the bezel. Just this continuous sloping curve that just kind of melts seamlessly from the bezel into the crystal. But let's talk about this bezel here for a second, because if you can see what they've done here, the markers are raised above the internal part of the bezel. It's kind of done in this 3D relief. I know Breitling does this as well, and they fill in the bezel with this kind of rubberized paint, or they used to. I'm not sure what material they use to fill in the bezel here, but it looks really good. Now the action on this bezel is fantastic. It's kind of got like a springy, clicky feel to it. There is a slight bounce back after each click, but once you're settled in there, it's kind of rock solid. The alignment is fantastic, no issues there whatsoever. The grip on it is one of the best I've ever felt. Really deep teeth here. And I know they do mention, being able to use this through snowboarding gloves and whatnot, so that was an intentional design choice. It does add a little overall to the kind of diameter, or the way it appears when looking at it, but really nice, easy to use bezel. Looking at the case, and keeping with the kind of rugged adventure aesthetic they're going for here, you have these kind of blocky crown guards around the crown. I think these look really nice, really well integrated pushers as well, and they have a super nice kind of tactile feel to them. It's soft, and then just a little tick that means you've activated it. And it is not a mecha quartz, so it's going to do the dance when resetting. Looking at the case in profile view, you'll see it is mostly mid-case with kind of no case back bubble at all. And while this design does sit close to the wrist, it does wear a little taller, which I find to be pretty common with chronographs. But all in all, it's a really good-looking profile. Now the crown comes in at 5.3 millimeters. I think it could maybe be a little bigger, but it's not too hard to use, even with this kind of large bezel and these kind of crown guards as well. It's a signed crown with their kind of cursive F logo for Fawler. And like I mentioned, the pushers have great action on them. Those are not signed in any way, just circular brushed. Now it came on this kind of single pass Nato strap. They actually give you two of them. It came with a black one as well, and it does look good on this OD green, but what watch doesn't? So we'll take that off for a second here so we can take a look at the case back. And pretty standard circular brushed center part. Looks kind of bead blasted out around a little bit of branding, and they give you, I think, the water resistance and designed in Denmark. Really tasteful case back. I do like how it really settles into the case almost completely. Now what I've been actually wearing it on is this Barton strap, and I just think it looks really good on there. We'll throw it on there so you guys can see it on wrist like that, but it would really kill on a brown leather strap as well. Going over the dimensions. Now, excluding these crown guards, which doesn't leave you a whole lot of room to get your calipers in there, but I measured this case at about 41 millimeters. It is, however, as I mentioned, 43 millimeters at the bezel. Lug to lug, it comes in at an even 50 millimeters, right on that upward range for me of what still wears really well. Thickness, it comes in at 13.8 millimeters, and that is including the double domed sapphire crystal. And it has a 22 millimeter lug width. Going over some of the other specs, double domed sapphire crystal. It's using old radium lume on the hands and the hour markers. There is no lume on the chronograph registers, but it is a lumed date wheel, which we will also take a look at in just a second. Now it is running the Miyota 6S21 quartz chronograph movement. I'm a big fan of this 2-register movement. Keeps it simple, running seconds and minutes, no 24-hour subdial or anything unnecessary. And it also features 100 meters of water resistance, which I think is awesome for a chronograph. Now on the Nato strap supplied, it came in at 88 grams. And here's how it wears on my 7 1/4 inch wrist. And it's not a small watch, but I think for its size, it wears really well. You can see here how it sits close to the wrist, but wears a little bit tall. The lug to lug on the upper end of what I would wear, but still no hangover. Fits very perfectly comfortably on a 7¼ inch wrist. So let's take a look at it side by side, some other watches. First up, here it is next to my Doxa, which is also just about 43 millimeters at the case, but it's smaller at the bezel than the case, which is the opposite of the Fawler, and I think it makes it present and wear like a smaller watch. Next up, the only other chronograph I have here is the Stratton Yacht Racer. Now this one again is similar. It's 42 millimeter case, but it's only 40 at the bezel. So despite the kind of white dial, which I think normally wears larger, I think the Stratton Yacht Racer is going to wear a little smaller than the Fawler Ryka. I would say the Fawler Ryka wears about like a 42. Whereas I think this as a 42 wears maybe closer to 40, 41. The worst. Last up here is the Seiko SKX 007. Again, about 42.5 millimeters, so almost the same overall size. Smaller dial opening here is going to make that Seiko look a little bit smaller. But these two actually probably wear pretty close on wrist. All right, lastly, let's check out that Lume.
Peep the Lume.
There you go. Pretty good Lume, especially for a chronograph. But for me, the star of the show here is that loomed date wheel down there. With just the one, it's not all that exciting to look at. But when you have some of the bigger, higher numbers in there, it actually looks really cool and it stands out a little more than it does right now. But yeah, I think for an old radium Lume application, this is a really good Lume. So there you go, the Fawler Ryka from Trendhim. So really attractive watch in a crazy tough, well-built package. I'm not sure this watch was actually inspired by either the Heuer or the Breitling, but it really happens to capture the essence of that look, especially in this colorway, but without being an homage at all. And the price seems really fair too, so I'll leave a link in the description. Definitely go check it out. Before I let you go, sneaker check. I'm wearing my suede Pooms, and that is it. I'm out. If it's not too much trouble, please like, subscribe, and come back next time. Peace.